and they all ask one main question, which is, why is Angela Davis communist? This is a very hard question to answer, mainly because I don't feel I've been taught the true meaning of communism. This is one of my reasons for writing you at the time.
Hold it right there. Why is Angela Davis a communist?
Actually, I think I answered that before when we were talking about what a revolutionary is.
Mm-hmm. You have been called a revolutionary, a militant. Much of the media has pictured you this way. It's talked about all over the world. What do you see as the meaning of the term revolutionary?
Well, there's no single, simple meaning of the term revolutionary. A revolutionary is a man or a woman who is a lot of things, but basically, the revolutionary wants to change the nature of society in a way to promote a world where the needs and interests of the people are responded to. A revolutionary realizes, however, that in order to create a world where human beings can live and love and be healthy and create, you have to completely revolutionize the entire fabric of society. You have to overturn the economic structure where you have a few individuals who are in possession of the vast majority of the wealth in this country that's been produced by the majority of the people, and you have to destroy this political apparatus which, under the guise of revolutionary government, perpetrates the most incredible misery on the masses of people.
One of the interesting things about the term revolutionary is the fact that people, so many people, see it in the context of violence, that revolutionary means violence. Violence every day, every minute, at any given time, no matter what the circumstances. How do you view this in the context of violence?
Well, of course, that's part and parcel of the same attempt to separate and isolate revolutionaries from the people. Of course, revolution does not mean violence in the sense that that's its defining characteristic.
Yet there are those who see it that way.
Well, and that's done in a very conscious manner to mislead people and to lead people to, for instance, equate a progressive socialist revolution with fascism. During the time that I was out in the streets and speaking throughout California, I found it incredible how many people defined socialism or communism as if it were the Third Reich.
Yeah.
Certainly, of course, though, in the history of revolutions, and not only socialist revolutions, but bourgeois democratic revolutions also. The American Revolution, for instance, you have had the occurrence of violence as a means of seizing power from the oppressor. But why?
Yeah.
This is because the oppressors have failed to acknowledge the fact that the people were right and that the people had the right to control their lives and to control their destinies. And they are the ones who always initiate the violence. If people are serious about moving ahead to create a better society, then of course they should not allow themselves to be deterred simply because a few people at the top, who are in possession usually of a monopoly on violence, decide that they're going to unleash all of their forces of oppression to stop them.
Many times the term communist, because I think it's been used by so many different aspects of our society to put down rather than to let people try to understand. Everybody shuns away from it. It's like it's a disease or something like that. And I just, what I'm trying to get through is that the brother here in that letter is raising a question And therefore, in his question, it seems that he's trying to say that there are some people who are plagued by that, and they let that get in the way. They don't want to know Angela Davis as a person, or even if they do, that prevents them from coming to know Angela Davis as a person.
Well, you see, now that might be true for, say, the vast majority of white people.
Yeah.
But one of the things which really impressed me when I was on the streets and fighting for my job at UCLA was that whenever I spoke to black people, whenever I spoke in the black community, very few people had hang-ups about communism. I can remember many times walking down the street and having someone stop me and say, are you Angela Davis? And I would say yes, and they would express their solidarity and say, a lot of sisters and brothers would say, even though I don't really know what communism is all about, just as the brother here said, they say, we know that there must be something good about it because otherwise the man wouldn't be coming down on you so hard. Mm-hmm. So I think that the resistance to understanding what communism is all about doesn't exist nearly as much in the black community as it does in the country as a whole. This letter here is an indication of that. What he's saying is that although he realizes that this country has kept away from him and many of our sisters and brothers the knowledge of what communism is, he wants to know about it. Yeah. And I'm sure that that's, when he says that that's one of the main questions that's asked, I doubt whether there's in the black community, at least, whether there are huge contours of hostility. Yeah, it's just a desire, curiosity to know. And that's what I generally say, and I answered the brother and tried to explain in a few words why I was a communist. And I said essentially the same thing that I had said when I told you why I was a revolutionary, because I have a very strong love for oppressed people, for my people. I want to see them free, and I want to see all oppressed people throughout the world free. Mm-hmm. And I realize that the only way that we can do this is by moving towards a revolutionary society where the needs and the interests and the wishes of all people can be respected.
How do you get there? Do you get there by confrontation, violence?
Oh, is that the question you were asking?
Yeah.
See, that's another thing. When you talk about a revolution, most people think violence, without realizing that the real content of any kind of revolutionary thrust lies in the principles and the goals that you're striving for, not in the way you reach them. On the other hand, because of the way this society is organized, because of the violence that exists on the surface everywhere, you have to expect that there are going to be such explosions. You have to expect things like that as reactions. If you are a black person and live in the black community all your life and walk out on the street every day seeing white policemen surrounding you, when I was living in Los Angeles, for instance, long before the situation in LA ever occurred, I was constantly stopped. No, the police didn't know who I was, but I was a black woman, and I had a natural, and they, I suppose, thought that I might be a, quote, militant. But over the last few years, there has come into being another kind of political prisoner. And I'm talking about all of the sisters and brothers who are victims of the system, who are easy targets of the police, who get railroaded through the courts into prison, often for no reason at all, who are there only because they're black. And I think a brother during the Attica Rebellion sort of expressed this whole thing when he was asked by a reporter what he was charged with. And he said he was charged with being black. That's why he was there. And coupled with the oppression that leads black people and brown people, people of color, into the jails and prisons of this country, has been a new kind of political awareness that has spread all over the jails and prisons throughout the country. When George Jackson and Fleeta Drumgo and John Cluchet and Ruchelle McGee, I could go on and on and on to name the sisters and brothers who have achieved a political awareness and a political commitment behind the walls. But you see, once they do this, then they are subjected to all of the terror that the prison system has to offer. Mm-hmm. And so they end up spending years and years and years in prison under the worst of circumstances. And when you live under a situation like that constantly, and then you ask me, you know, whether I approve of violence. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all. Whether I approve of guns. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. Some very, very good friends of mine were killed by bombs that were planted by racists. I remember from the time I was very small, I remember the sounds of bombs exploding across the street, our house shaking. I remember my father having to have guns at his disposal at all times because of the fact that at any moment we might expect to be attacked. The man who was at that time in complete control of the city government, his name was Bull Connor, would often get on the radio and make statements like, niggers have moved into a white neighborhood, we better expect some bloodshed tonight. And sure enough, there would be bloodshed. After the 4 young girls who lived, one of them lived next door to me. I was very good friends with the sister of another one. My sister was very good friends with all 3 of them. My mother taught one of them in her class. My mother, in fact, when the bombing occurred, one of the mothers of one of the young girls called my mother and said, can you take me down to the church to pick up Carol? We heard about the bombing, and I don't have my car. And they went down, and what did they find? They found limbs and heads strewn all over the place. And then after that, in my neighborhood, all of the men organized themselves into an armed patrol. They had to take their guns and patrol our community every night because they did not want that to happen again. I mean, that's why when someone asks me about violence, I just find it incredible. What it means is that the person who's asking that question has absolutely no idea what black people have gone through, what black people have experienced in this country since the time the first black person was kidnapped from the shores of Africa.